Hi, it's me, Termo. Welcome to this video. Ciao, sono io, Termo. Benvenuto in questo video. As you may have noticed from the introduction video, this series of videos will be a motivational series aimed to giving a hand to all the people who, like me, have fought, are still fighting, or will have to fight with a disability, and eventually learn to live with it and improve the quality of their lives. I want to start by talking about my story, but it will be followed by other people's stories as well. So, as to show that you don't need to be rich or be lucky, but the luck and success you can achieve on a personal level with these difficulties is simply something we have inside. I strongly believe that the moment we are put in front of such situation is because we have the ability to overcome it, and indeed to improve our lives thanks to these events. As I said before, I will not be the only one to tell their story, but for now, I'll start. I am Emanuele Nocchi. I was born in Venice. I grew up, let's say, around Italy. My childhood and teenage were spent in the Rimini area, and I developed a great passion for cooking, also thanks to my grandmother. A bit of a cliché, isn't it? Italian, cooking, food. So I decided to take an educational path, and then I started to go in the high school at the Hotel Management School Pandolfo Malatesta in Rimini. There, I began to learn the art of cooking, which I put into practice immediately, with internships that the school organized together with the local structures. Over the years, I had the opportunity to work in various companies. In 2010, I started working in a 4-star hotel. I did an internship of 2 months, where I immediately established a good relationship with the chef of the kitchen, and from there, I began the summer season. A season that was different from all the others, not only for what happened at the end of it, but also for what I did and the relationship I established. The season was very heavy. We worked non-stop every day. Despite everything, I was always full of energies. I was tired, yes, but I liked what I was doing, or rather, I loved what I was doing. And this gave me the charge to go ahead and always gives my best. On the evening of August 7, 2010, after finishing the service and setting up the kitchen, I found myself choosing whether to go home right away or stay at the hotel with some customers. It was raining heavily and I had a scooter, so I decided to stay at the hotel. And while waiting for the rain to stop, I continued to spend the evening with these customers. I had a good time, but at one point, looking at the clock, I realized that it was already 2 a.m. So I decided it was time to go home. The rain was almost completely gone. I grabbed my helmet and got on the bike to go home, like any other night. About halfway home, it started to rain, and as a result, I started to slow down because I was scared. The wheels were summer tires and I was afraid of slipping. At one point, as I arrived in a dimly lit village, a cat crossed the road. My instinct was to brake and try to avoid the animal, but the moment I did, I lost control of the bike and ended up into a ditch on the right side of the road. I don't remember exactly how I crashed, but I do remember that at the moment I ended up in the ditch, I hit a pipe that amputated my leg, but I didn't realize it at the time. I realized it though, that I was no longer wearing a helmet. I touched my head and I saw blood. I felt that something was wrong. So I started crawling from the inside of the ditch and arrived on the side of the road, where I raised my arm and tried to stop some cars. I remember exactly that it seemed like an eternity. Every second seemed to last minutes, and I didn't understand what was going on. I knew where I was, but I couldn't describe it. The moment I raised my arm, trying desperately to stop cars, I found my phone. One of those old phones with a keypad. Fortunately, I pressed the call button twice, and it automatically called the last contact I've been in touch, and that was my mother. She answered me worried because it was in the middle of the night and she heard that I had a strange voice, so she began asking what happened. I told her that I had a crash with my bike, but that I couldn't describe to her where I was. I knew exactly where I was, I just couldn't tell her. Fortunately, 2 cars stopped, after having seen several pass by. I remember the very lights of the headlights passing in front of my face. One of those 2 people picked up the phone and talked with my mother, called the ambulance, and disappeared. I never saw him again. I only remember that he was a middle-aged man. The other one was a woman, who stood next to me and kept asking me questions. She kept me asking me if I knew who I was, my name, where I lived, how old I was, trying to keep me conscious. I remember at one point I started to feel strange sensations, a tingly sensation. I started saying, "What about my leg? What's wrong with my leg?" And I kept asking her, and she ignored my questions and kept asking hers. At one point I grabbed my leg by the thigh, pulled it up, and saw a piece fall off and swing in front of me, fully turned, so I could see the foot swinging. It was a bolt out of the blue. Up to that point, and all this I'm saying lasted around a minute, I didn't understand anything of what happened. I had no idea that my leg had come off. When I realized that thing, I put my leg down and started screaming. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I was just thinking, "Oh God, I lost my leg. Oh God, I lost my leg." Fortunately, 1 kilometer away, there was an ambulance that arrived in time and saved my life. Because in the 2 minutes that has passed, I had lost 3 liters, actually 3 liters and a half of blood. I was almost dead. They saved me and took me to the hospital. During the trip in the ambulance, I only remember that they continued to give me morphine and I continued to feel an atrocious pain. A pain that I didn't feel before, and despite all the morphine they were giving me, I continued to feel very strong. And I had only a great terror and fear, because I didn't know what would happen. I was terrified. I had just taken a strong blow, I was confused, and I didn't have the slightest idea of what would happen to my life. Was I dying? I couldn't conceive of what had happened. I was just living it. The last thing I remember is the moment I arrived at the hospital. They put me on the bed. They put the parts of my leg back together, and the pain was so strong that I fainted. With today, I wanted to tell you about the experience of the accident, to make you understand that I was a carefree guy who was starting to build his future, because the plans I had after the season would have been to go to England and start working with the chef I was working with at the time. But thank you for being with me today. This is just the beginning of my story. From here, there will be chapters and chapters where I will tell you of my progress, my failures during my time in the hospital, and also all the surgeries I've done, as of today, are 44. Life can change from 1 second to the next, and it can change drastically. We have no control over it, but we do have control over ourselves. See you in the next video, where I will tell you what my experience in the hospital was and how I got back on my feet. If you liked the video, leave a like, and if you want to know more about my story and how it evolved, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell and activate notifications so you don't miss any more videos. Also, if you have people around you or know people who are going through difficult situations, share this video so that as many people as possible can get the information that could change their lives. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you at the next video. This party's out of control.